mean, in Nigeria, the costs and the profit involved, the ups and downs, the highs and lows, like any other business, right? So with me today, I've got a gentleman by the name Ernest, who basically has agreed to share his wealth of knowledge in this industry with us, and I hope you enjoy, this session. Don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and like I said, if you're just joining, I've got Ernest with us here. I'll let him introduce himself. But I can hear some like breaking. I don't know if that's from you.
Um,
Maybe some. Don't know why that is.
do you still hear it?
Yeah, I can hear you, but there's that crackling sound. I don't know what that
Sound?
is.
Okay, let's see if I can adjust it on my end here. I think it's let me adjust the mic.
What's going on, people? Thank you for joining us. If you
All
can
right,
hear me,
I think it's better now. Do you still hear it?
yeah, as long as your device is sitting still, you can crack
It
on with it.
is. It is. Hey guys, hope you all are doing okay. I just want to quickly share my own knowledge and experience in catfish farming with you guys. I've been into catfish farming for like a year and a half now. I started late 2018, and I've gone through two production. I'm on my third production right now, and I just figured I could share some of my knowledge with you guys. And I reached out to Franklin, and it said it was okay. So Franklin, thank you for giving me a platform to address your audience. I do appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
So with my own knowledge, I would say basically it falls under three categories when it comes to catfish rearing or the raising of catfish. It falls under three major categories, which is you need to think of the infrastructural setup, you need to think of the machinery implementation, like what are the things I will be needing to successfully operate my farm. You need to also think of the branding eventually, and that branding involves marketing, creating the right logo, creating a business plan, and all that good stuff. So let's start with the infrastructure setup. I kind of wrote a list of all what I want to go through here. That way, I follow a plan with you guys. That way, we go straight to the point.
Right,
So land acquisition, you can get a land. You can either buy or you can rent. For
right,
catfish farming, I would usually recommend, if you can afford the means to, you go ahead and buy the land, because with renting, after a while, if your customers already are familiar with that particular location, trying to move them to another location and tell them that I'm no longer in this place, it can also affect your sales eventually.
mm,
So we like to make sure you're in a place where you'll be there for a long time, if that makes
right,
sense.
right,
So under the infrastructure setup, I would say also when it comes to getting a piece of land, you want to make sure the location is targeting your audience. So if
okay,
you go into catfish farming, you want to make sure where you are putting that land, you have um, the audience. If it's like close to a university, close to a hotel, restaurants, the people that would usually patronize your produce, you want to make sure your farm is not that far away from them. It aids sales, most definitely does aid sale. And then we talk of the type of ponds that you want to construct. It could be concrete pond, plastic pond, whatever you can afford. Just for this analysis, we're not going to dive deep into the infrastructure setup. What I would say though is you should get a professional, hire the services of a professional when it comes to setting up the farm. Okay. Now, for 15,000 catfish that we're using in this illustration, I would say for 15,000, you need at least 10 ponds. You need at least 10 ponds, either concrete, plastic. You need to get a professional that has been setting up concrete ponds or
right. Let me
plastic
just say,
ponds.
let me say, sorry to interrupt you. Let me clarify as we're going on. So you said they're going to need 10 tons for
At least 10
15,000.
ponds. Correct.
So when you're saying about buying, procuring a piece of land,
Mhm.
what size of land realistically would you advise that they get? Would you say a plot or two plots of
I would
land,
say a
or
plot would do just fine. A plot would do just fine.
would that have enough room to have 10
Correct.
ponds?
Yes, a plot of
Okay.
land will do just fine. I know in Nigeria measurements they have about 100 by 60 is what's considered a plot of land. So um,
Right.
that would do just fine for 10 pounds. Okay.
And if they can get more than a plot, all well and good.
Correct. They can get more than a plot depending on what they can afford, you know. So I would say a plot would do just fine. So,
Okay.
like I would say, you need to get professionals, because if you're going to invest your money into this, you want to do it the right way. The last thing you want to do is invest so much money and find out that there are cracks in your ponds, and you know all those little things you do not want to affect your overall production. Because once you start talking, it's a complete level from that point. So you want to make sure the infrastructural setup is on point. It has to be, because then you need the services of bricklayers, you need the services of plumbers, you need the services of welders, you need a lot of people to get that set up. I don't want to go into the cost of that because it will vary depending on location and depending on who you get. Okay. So that being said, now you need the machineries as well, because if you're raising 15,000 catfish, it will be advisable that you get the right machineries in place, because
Right.
you're talking about feeding, which is a major factor when it comes to catfish farming. So you eventually you don't necessarily have to, you know, get the machinery for feeding immediately, but that is something you should put in mind that it's required definitely if you're raising 15,000. Now you can decide to opt out to buy the already processed, the already made floating feed or sinking feed, as the case may be. But eventually you will need to be producing your own food at the farm. It is needed if you must scale in your profit margin. Then
Right.
we're talking about the generator. Of course, you need a power plant, especially in Nigeria. Power is not, we don't have the luxury of constant power in Nigeria. So you need to make plans to get you a generator for your farm. It is very important. And then you need to set up the farm for electricity. And if you intend to go into feed production to sell out to other farmers, you also need to like have a processing plant for that as well, which is can also be located in the farm. Okay. Um,
Right.
Other than that, then we'll talk about the branding. Branding is very, very important. That's when it comes to marketing. Although I would say catfish has a high demand all year round in Nigeria. So if the fresh fish, the smoked fish, there's a high demand for it currently. And part of the reason is not all farmers are successful, unfortunately, when it comes to catfish farming. So if you are able to produce your catfish to table size, you can almost be guaranteed a sale. You know, most people will come and they will clear up your farm. It's almost
When you
guaranteed.
say growing your catfish to table size, because I know that's catfish farmer slang. What do you
Mhm.
mean table size in terms of size, so they understand what you're saying?
Well, table stat will start from 500 grams to a kg. The table size start from like 500 grams to 1 kg.
Right.
So the 1 kg actually, it's the grow out size. That is where you can actually sell it out. But people will start buying from 500 grams. Okay. So when it's
Okay.
like 500 grams to 700 grams, it's what we consider the table size. Then from 700 grams to like 1 kg, that's like the grow out size where people would come and tell you, hey, I want the table size or I want the grow out size. So table size is technically 500 grams to 700 grams. And then the 1 kg is like the grow out size, which is available for sales as well. So people will start buying from 500 grams. That's when you start
Right.
making a sale. Some farmers would rather wait till it gets to 1 kg because it's easier to calculate your profit before they
Okay.
sell. Like I sell mine at 1 kg. I don't wait till I don't wait till it's till like 500. I kind of like wait till it's 1 kg, and I operate a farm as well. So I have my own catfish farm, and I do sell out. I've been in the business since 2018, like I said. There's different practices to it. Okay, so if you are intending to go into catfish farming, you can decide to go into the catfish, the fresh catfish that people would use to like for restaurants, you know, barbecue and all that. And you can also choose to go into the smoked catfish. Okay, so with all that said, let's just go ahead and start the cost analysis for 15,000 catfish. Okay,
Okay.
so if you are trying to go into raising 15,000 catfish, how much it will cost you, what you should expect as your profit from it. Okay, so the we have what we call the conversion ratio with catfish. The conversion ratio talks about how many feeding it will take for one catfish to get to a table size or grow out size for you to sell. So like one catfish will
Right.
need how many kilograms of feed? Okay. So from statistics and from my own experience, I've come to realize that it would take me 1 kg worth of feed to raise one catfish up to the grow out size. That's to the size where you can actually sell. Okay. And most farmers try to formulate their own food, and just so
Mm.
they can meet with the pricing. Because one mistake most farmers makes is they overstock. Okay, and you do not want to do that, because although it is cheaper to get your catfish from at the little stage, we call it the juvenile or the fingerling stage. That's when they just hashed them. Like when you go to a breeder, you get like a hashed catfish. It takes about 2 weeks to a month, and then they'll sell it. I mean, 2 weeks to 1 week, and then they sell it out for you. And then you can take it to your farm to start raising it from that point on. But from that 2 weeks to 1 month, you can take that fish, and they sell it for like 30 naira per fish. Currently, it's about 30 naira per fish. So one of the mistakes most farmers make is they overstock without considering how much they can afford to feed their
To
catfish.
feed them.
To
Can
feed
you
them.
also specify for people? I know you. How long will it take you to feed
Mhm.
your catfish from fingerling to when they're like the table size ready for sale? How many months does that take?
Now it depends. It depends on how you feed. Okay, so if you are consistently feeding for 4 months, should be okay. You can achieve your 1 kg size at 4 months. That is if you feed twice a day. Okay, if you feed twice a day, and you make sure they're satisfied with the feeding. Okay, but if you have some issues financially, and you're trying to like just mix their feeding, let's say sometimes you feed them twice a day and sometimes you feed them once a day, it might take up to 5 and 6 months. Okay. Okay, but if you feed them accurately, it should not be more than 6 months before you can harvest your catfish. Okay, 6 months is the targeted time to raise your catfish up to the point where you can start selling and making a profit out of it. Okay, and there's also a lot of
Right.
factors that comes in play with that, because when you're thinking of raising your catfish, you also need to make sure you have a good water supply. I'll still come to that on the point of this live session, but still on feeding, it is important to know how much you need to know how to do the calculation. So I can only advise that if whoever is following this live session to have like a pen and paper handy, because we'll be giving out figures shortly. Um, so if you want to do your calculation, this is how I do my calculation. The conversion ratio is 1:1. So that means it's going to take 1 kg worth of feed to feed one catfish up to table size. Okay. So
Right.
with that being said, one bag of catfish feed comes with 15 kg. Okay, one bag of catfish feed comes to 15 kg. So in other words, it would take one bag of feed to raise 15 catfish up to table size or grow out size. Okay,
Right.
so if we're going to raise 15,000 catfish, what we'll be doing is we'll have to divide that 15,000 by 15, because that will then tell us how many bags of catfish feed that we will need for the entire process. It's an estimate that would give you a good idea of what to keep in your pocket before you stock your farm. Because you see
Right.
farmers stocking their farm with 5,000 catfish when they can only afford to raise 2,000 catfish. And then, the first 1 to 2 months of the process of raising your catfish, they don't really tend to eat that much. But on the third month, they go to a next level with food. They would always feel like from the third month, if you're not careful, you'll be frustrated as a farmer if you do not plan the entire process before going into it. That's when you see farmers having to sell out before the right time, just because they can no longer afford to feed their fishes. So that's when we always recommend do the math before you stock your farm. Okay, it's always important. So if we're going to raise 15,000 catfish, we're going to divide that by 15, and I think I already did the math here. So that will give us about 1,000 bags of catfish feed that we would need for that entire process. So it means if we're going to raise 15,000 catfish, we'll be needing an estimate of 1,000 bags of feed
to feed them for that period of 4 months.
Correct, for that period of well, 4 months. Yeah, 4 months. If you have a good breed and you're constantly changing your water, 4 months you need about 100,000 bags to feed 15,000 catfish. Okay, the price of feeding now varies depending on the region, the location you are in Nigeria. They don't have the same price. It's not like a national price wherever you are in Nigeria. It varies. But the average cost of a bag of feed is about 7,500 naira. Okay, that's about the average cost of a bag of feed.
Wow! So 1,000 bags, about 750K.
So 1,000 bags for
Wait, what am I saying?
7.5.
No.
Yeah, that's
7.5 mil.
Yeah.
God damn.
Yeah, it is not 750K. I wish it was.
My mind went left for a moment. God damn.
I wish it was. I was like,
whoa.
I don't think it is. But yeah, I wish it was. But it is. It is more than that. That's why it's important to know your numbers before you go into it, because most people would just go into it and say, I can afford to buy 15,000 fingerlings. It's not going to cost me. Just multiply 15,000 times 30. It's never going to be up to $1 million. I don't think it's up to $1 million. But the thing is, when you start feeding, the whole process, okay? So just follow me and I'll go through the entire process. So you need at least 7.5 million to feed that amount of catfish up to the point where you can sell it, okay? But after you successfully raised your catfish up to sale, then you got to look at the figures again. It takes the average cost of selling one catfish now. Currently, at my farm, I sell for 1,000 naira per fish. 1 kg.
1,000 naira per fish.
No, I'm sorry, 1,000 naira per kilogram worth of fish. Because you have a fish that will be even weighing more than 1 kg. Okay, there are times where you can have like three fishes in a scale, and it will weigh more than 3 kg. So one fish might weigh more than one. So I do charge 1,000 per kg. Okay, so so with this estimation, we're estimating about 15,000 kg, if that makes sense, which is roughly about 50,000 catfish. Okay, so what we do is, the average cost of 1,000 catfish is about 1,000. I'm sorry. The average cost of 1 kg worth of fish is 1,000 naira. Okay, in my farm, that's how much I sell mine. Wholesale, resale, that's the price. Because of the cost of feeding, I have to calculate everything into it. So I have to add my operational cost and everything. So I am making a profit at 1,000, and that's it. And that's where it also comes in play, knowing where to set up your farm. If there's a high demand, a really high demand in that location, they will come and pay for it. You won't struggle to sell it. As a matter of fact, I started receiving orders at my farm when construction was going on. I haven't even stocked my farm yet. That's how high demand was, and it still is right now. Okay, so even while construction was still going on, while they were bringing the bags of cement, while they were bringing sand, and everywhere was still just messy, people were coming to leave me their contact information that the moment you start harvesting your catfish, call me. So that's how high demand is. Okay. So if you raise 15,000 catfish at my farm right now, you would sell for 15 million at harvest. That's how I just put it, because in my area there's a high demand for it. And so if you now subtract, okay, remember we spent about 7.5 million in just feeding.
That's roughly 50% of that money.
That's it. Roughly. Now I would say you've not included the cost of the infrastructural cost. Now, the reason why I'm not adding the infrastructural costs to this calculation, because you don't do that all the time. You only do the setup of the infrastructure one time. Okay.
Yeah.
So you only set up the infrastructure one time. The cost of operation, that will be frequent as well, but it's not noticeable. Okay. Now, this is just the major thing in the operational cost of catfish rearing is feeding. I cannot stress that enough. That is very, very important. So there's a huge profit margin when it comes to catfish farming, but you have to be successful at it. So now I'm going to go into the day-to-day operation of the farm, just to give an idea of
Right.
the things that should be done. Okay. Now, when it comes to catfish farming, water is very important. Water is very, very important. Like, they can't survive without water, obviously, because that's their habitat. They have to be in water. Um, Now, the type of water source you use for your farm is very, very important. Some will connect their farm to like a stream, but the recommended is a borehole. You need to have a borehole at your farm. Now, if you're raising 15,000 catfish, I would say you need 1 to 2 boreholes in the farm. I currently have
Right.
one borehole at my farm, but I'm currently in the process of digging another borehole because I just want to keep having. You need to have water always, always. Now, I do change mine every 2 days because after a while, if you do not change the water becomes acidic. And with an acidic water, it affects the fish. Then they're unable to grow. And that's when you have stunted growth at the farm. Okay. And
Right.
because some of their feed, if you do not know how to feed your catfish and you just keep throwing the feed on top of the water and they're done eating, they pull away from the feed. And over a period of time, it will sink and go to the bottom of the pond. And that would mix with their own waste as well. And that will increase the ammonia content in the water. And an increased ammonia content in the water would affect the oxygen level in that water. It becomes very, very acidic. And that's when you see the fish, they start like trying to come up on top of the water to like get oxygen outside the water. You see them like raising their head coming on top of the pond. And that's when you know it is a must to change that water. The water might be clean. It might look clean to you, but it is terrible inside. So I
So,
always
like you change your water every 2 days.
every two
So,
days.
are you
Yes.
saying it's a must for people to make sure that they change, the water like every 2 days?
Yes, I would say if you're targeting that 4 months mark in harvest, you need to feed your feed twice a day, the morning and in the evening, and you need to stick to a particular time as well. Okay, you don't want to feed them 8 a.m. this morning and then feed them 9:30 the next morning. They are very, very aware as well. So if you stick to a time, they've prepared themselves to be available for feeding at that time. So even when they hear footsteps, they hear you come with your bag of food, they are already waiting because they know it's really interesting. That's why I love
Yum, yum,
catfish
yum, yum,
farming.
yum, 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 yum,
It's really interesting because at that time you see them, they are already waiting for you. So if you stick to a particular time, it's going to help both you and the fishes because they know that at that time, that's when they get fed. So you will feed them well, and then in taking the feed, and in the evening you feed them as well. So in order to meet up to that 4 months target, I try to do harvest 3 times a year. That's my goal. So the way I can meet mine is I feed them twice a day, and I change the water every 2 days. I've met a farmer that changes every other day. There are farmers that change theirs every other day because if you get a fresh water into your pond, that's a whole new fresh level of oxygen. So the more
So
frequent you're able to do that,
does that enable their growth in some way? Make
it
them
does.
does that, right?
It
Okay.
does. Just like we humans, if we stay in an environment that's polluted and we don't have fresh oxygen, it affects us as well. That's basically the same with catfish. So because they use the grills to bring in the oxygen from the water, that's what they use to get the oxygen from the water. And if it's polluted, it's hard for them to get that oxygen. And even if they take it in, it stunts their growth. So you might be feeding your fish really well, but you're lacking in the area of the constant change of water, it would affect their growth. So they don't
Right.
they work hand in hand. Okay, so that's why I say if you can just make sure you feed them twice a day. I change mine every 2 days. So if I change mine on Monday, I change on Wednesday, I change on Friday, I change on Sunday. I go that route. And that's why while you're setting up, this is why I say it's important to have um, a professional set up your farm for you. Because while they're constructing the pond, they'll construct an inflow of water, and they'll also
Right.
construct where the water comes out of. So there has
Right.
to be a system in place. So you have to be able to drain out the old water. You also have a system of putting in new fresh water to the pond. That's why you need a professional to set that up for you. But yeah, so the feeding, the water is very important, and also sorting out of the fishes is very, very important, because even though you stock your farm the exact same size, let's say all the fingerlings or juvenilings, with like juveniles rather, they are like the smaller catfish that you buy from your breeder. So when you even if you stock them all at the same size, over a period of time, they'll outgrow each other. And that's just because some will get to the food quicker than others will. And as a result, they would overgrow each other during the process of raising them. So what you need to do as a farmer is at least once a month during the whole process, sort them out. Take the bigger
Right.
ones to a separate pond, and keep the smaller ones in a separate pond as well. Because if you do not do that, the consequences of that is they prey on the smaller one. They tend to eat them. They're very notorious at doing that.
Is that
If you've
what they
not
call? Is that what they call cannibalism?
cannibalism, yes, yes, that is it. So they tend to prey on the smaller ones, and once they prey on the smaller ones, it becomes food for all, unfortunately. So like you will see a big catfish just like try to poke on the smaller catfish, and once they sense injury, they all come at that smaller fish, and they just in minutes that fish is gone. So we always try to make sure we notice the size so we can
Mm.
sort them out. It's very, very important as well. So sorting out, changing up the water constantly is very important, and feeding. So if you can stock your farm with your means and know that, okay, this is how much, if all you can raise successfully is 1,000 catfish, and that's what you have the means to feed, by all means go for that. You can always scale up as as time goes on, because there's an all year round demand for catfish. But don't be greedy. That's one thing. Don't say, oh, because there's an all year round for it, let me just go ahead and stock my farm with 50,000. If you can afford to feed 50,000 within that period of time, by all means go for it. But I would say make sure you have what it takes to feed them, because the last thing you want is to be in a situation where your fishes are asking for food and you cannot provide.
Yeah.
It's not a good place to be in, because at that point you'll be desperate to sell, and then farmers will come and be like, hey, that's all right, I'll buy from you, and then they'll take it off from you. But the thing is, you are losing at the back end because you've not met your target. So
Right.
it's always better to sell starting from at least 500 grams to 1 kg, which is a
Right.
1,000 grams. Okay, I think that's pretty much it from me. Yeah, I think I can start taking questions now if anyone has any questions with
Have
catfish
you?
farming.
Have you? Yeah. Let me ask you something very good. So you covered all your bullet points in your documents, right?
Correct. I've talked about the machinery implementation, and I've talked about the day-to-day operation as well, which is more of changing the water. Now you can also get. It's a good thing you asked that. Um, Very importantly, I think this is part of the most important thing aside feeding is being at the forefront of your business. I think that one is very, very important.
Which is the management side of things.
The management time is correct. So being at the forefront of your business is very important. This is a business as well. In as much as we consider it's a business, it involves capital and investments. So you need to address it as a business. Um, so what I do at
Right.
my farm is
Yeah. Go on. Go on. Go on. Go on. Go on.
okay. I was gonna say what I do at my farm is I am not in the country. I'm not in Nigeria right now because of the COVID. I'm still in America right now. But I try to be in Nigeria at every harvest. Okay. I don't necessarily have to be there doing the day-to-day operation. I have my farm manager take care of that. Okay. So she reports to me on a daily. She reports to me. And there's this there's this slogan at my farm that one catfish means a lot. So if I lose one catfish due to cannibalism of the other catfish, I need a record of it. I need to see a picture of that fish. And my farm manager, they operate with an iPhone. So with iPhone, when you take a picture of it, it tells you like the dates the picture was captured and gives you the time and everything. So that's how I keep track of my farm. And if you go to my farm page on Instagram, you would see how I set up my farm, my ponds, because they have a lock to it, and only my farm manager has that lock to it. So I keep a really, really close eye to my business, and I can legit tell you how many catfish I have currently at my farm as we speak, and that is how much I expect to see at harvest. So when I get to the farm and it's not tallying with my records, then everyone is in trouble. That's how I push my business.
Everyone and their mama is getting fired.
Everyone's in trouble because yeah,
Hello,
I always
crazy.
I don't play when it comes to that. I do not play with that. Now
Yeah,
I take care of my employees. I take care of them really well. They can.
Let me ask you an important question
Mhm,
about rots. I'm sure you would know this
mhm,
because I understand in the catfish business, there are, as you would appreciate, there are numerous people whereby, you know, when you want to start, you buy your fingerlings and stuff. Some people, you know, you go and buy from people that actually grow them, right?
correct,
And there
correct.
is called, is it? I'm correct. That's the right term, rock. Whereby when you buy the fingerlings, right? Some of them
Mhm.
might have already become
But correct,
problematic.
correct,
But
correct.
unbeknown
Mhm.
to the person buying them, you buy a lot of this and then you're feeding them. So right from the onset, you're already throwing money down the drain. Because I've actually spoken to someone else who said a lot of people lose money when you buy. He said some people that manufacture these fingerlings, right? They
Mhm.
keep the best ones for themselves,
Mhm.
and they even you have told me about how I think you should. And that you mentioned that bit as well,
Correct.
where the feed, where a lot of dodgy things can be done about the feeds that can kill your fish and lead to mortality rates. So somebody told me about the fingerlings, whereby you might buy ones that will become problematic or just die out. What do you think?
Correct. It's a good thing you said that. I actually skipped that out. I do appreciate you. That is very, very important. As a matter of fact, that is another key part when it comes to catfish production. It is very, very important. You know, you buying fingerlings or juvenile from a breeder that is not credible, that's like a first step towards failure. You've not even started, but you're already failing because it is very, very, very important. So what I do is I have a trusted breeder, and my advice to that is before you buy, make sure you go to their farm and see how their grow out size catfish looks like. Okay, how long is this cat? How long have you been raising this? Because in the process of hashing is the process of making fries, which is like juvenile catfish. Okay, so in the process of doing that, you will need a brood stock, which is like the age that they're ready for reproduction. They have to be a certain age. I think
Okay.
with the male it has to be 2 years, and with the female it has to be 1 year. That is the appropriate age for hashing. Now I am not quite skilled at hashing yet, so I buy from a breeder that is good at it. Okay, so
Okay.
most breeders tend to be greedy. They do not wait for those parent stock to be matured enough for reproduction before fertilizing their eggs to make other catfish. So as a result of that, they end up producing fingerlings and juveniles that are not healthy. In the first 1 to 2 weeks to 1 month to 2 months, they might be okay, but in the process of production, that's how you notice people are having like 1,000 loss at the farm, 2,000 loss
Mm.
at the farm, even though they're doing everything right. It is the process of reproduction. The breeders, they tend to be greedy sometimes because, like you said, they keep the good part for themselves, and they just sell out the other parts just so they can go through the
The
cycle
rocks.
again and do the same thing. So it is important to know that with hatchery, the parent stock have to be of age for reproduction before they use them. But most breeders do not wait till they attain that particular age for
So
reproduction.
how do you, fantastic, how do you advise someone who perhaps at this point might have limited knowledge, but they are passionate, they want to go into that sector? So what is it that they need to look out for in terms of a credible breeder, for them to not end up buying dodgy looking, fingerlings that would then lead to major financial loss? So what would you say in a nutshell that, okay, if you want to go into this business, how do you know a credible breeder? Because anybody could pose and say, "Oh, I'm a breeder," and then they could end up telling you nonsense. So, how do people look out for credible breeders then?
The one way I do mine is if they do not produce up to grow out size, I don't buy from them. That's one
Right.
way that's one way I do that as well, because most people that are producing it right, they're doing it the right way, they also grow in their farm. So you would look at their farm and see how many grow out stage they have. If you go to a farm and all they do is just hashing is the process of, you know, raising producing fingerlings.
Yeah.
If all they
Yeah.
do is just hashing, then I would advise do not get from that particular farmer. You want to get from a farmer that's also producing just like you want to produce, because they have been doing it, they've had different circles. And also ask farmers that are close to you that are also growing up catfish. Ask them where they're getting theirs from, if you like the results that they get. Okay. And that's where being at the forefront of your business comes in play. You have to be on ground when it comes to this times. You have to, like, before I opened my farm, I had to go to a farm in Lagos, and I was there for like 2 to 3 days just to see how the day-to-day operation was, asking questions like, where do you get your fingerlings from? Where do you get your juveniles from? How long have you been doing it? And that guy has been doing
Right.
it for like 15 years. So he's been doing this for like 15 years. So he was like, all right, this is where you should get yours from if you're looking at succeeding at this. And other ideas, okay? You don't want to just, and that's another thing. Most people go for the cheaper juveniles, and that's when they run into issues like this. Okay. Now the advice, the good the good price of a juvenile at this time is 30 naira. But you see people saying they want to sell theirs for 15 naira, even 10 naira per juvenile.
Mm.
That's a number one red flag. You know, that's a real number one, because you're gonna be investing money in raising and growing this. You want to make sure you start out right. So at that point, I would say, you know, go with recommendations and make sure wherever you're getting it from has a farm as well that grows out, you know, big, that grows out up to grow out size, because that's how you can save yourself the trouble of shutting down because you're having massive casualties at the farm. Now mine at my farm, I would say though, is it is almost impossible not to have casualties in the process of raising your catfish. But
Right.
as long as it doesn't exceed, at least for starters, at least 10% of your overall production cost, of the overall total. So let's say you're raising 1,000, for instance. As long as you do not have more than 100 loss, which is a lot, but for starters, yes, because you're still learning, so you might not get one or two things right away. Then your next production will be a lot better. As long as it doesn't exceed 10%, you should be good. And one other thing I would mention is when you buy this juveniles from the breeders, they do give you extras most times, and that's just to compensate for what they expect you
Right.
to do during the process. Okay, so most of these breeders, they would, let's say you buy 1,000, they might end up giving you 1,300 or 1,200, and that extra is just to,
Oh.
and that's just to like compensate the loss that you will be having that they expect. Okay, so as long as it doesn't exceed 10%, you should be good. Then you know you're on track, and then you want to keep going back to that particular breeder. Okay, so you do not want to change breeders too. And with that said, one other thing I
Nice.
need to mention. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Go on. Go on. Go on. Go on.
One other thing I need to mention is the smoked catfish. You know, we've explored the opportunities with
Yeah. 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 You were meant to talk about smoked catfish and
yeah,
how a breeder can make even more money from this.
correct. So I have farmers that come to me, my farm, and they will tell me, "Hey, I want 2 ponds," and usually my pond will have like 2,000 catfish. I think that's about the maximum I can keep at my one particular pond in my farm. And they say I want like 2 3 ponds, which is like going to 4 to 5,000 catfish, and that's because they intend to take that fish, add value to it, and by adding value, I mean they intend to smoke it, and then by smoking it, they're increasing the shelf life of that fish, and then they can keep it for like 6 months while they're selling it. So there's a higher, even though there's a high demand for fresh catfish, there's a higher demand for smoked catfish.
Smoked catfish.
For smoked
Can
catfish.
you give us some figures, please, so people
Numbers?
get?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So currently, I do not. I'm trying to get to the process where I can smoke my catfish at the end of before the end of the year as well. But currently in Lagos, I know for a fact I follow a few farms on Instagram as well, and I think the least price I have seen for 1 kg of catfish is like 4,500 naira. That's the least I've seen. I've seen 4,250 as well. It's within 4,250 to 4,500. One catfish,
That's
one
for
kg,
1 kilogram.
1 kg, 1 kilogram, correct. And then you have farmers like me selling the fresh one, 1 kg for 1,000 naira. So you see, there's like a huge
Market.
difference in that. Yeah, and there's also a huge market. So you have farmers who do not even bother with the production of the fresh catfish. They go to farmers who have already produced their fresh catfish, and then they just buy from them, and then go smoke it, and then they resell, and then they make more money. So it's like a different chain. There are different areas where you can profit from this. And now I'm intending to start producing feed as well. Eventually, that's something I'm looking towards doing as well. So they can also focus on producing feed for other farmers, because due to the high cost of feed, and the reason is, that's another thing I need to mention with this catfish rearing. Most of these feeds that are being imported from other countries, the resellers, like the retail people over on ground in Nigeria that resell it to other farmers, sometimes it overstays at their factory or the warehouse, and it gets expired. Okay, but because they do not want to lose money, unfortunately, what they do is they take the content of that expired feed, and they put it in a different bag, reseal it, and extend the expiration date and sell it to farmers. But that's also a problem that most catfish farmers are experiencing as well, is the feeding, which is you buy a feed which is already expired without even knowing. So that's an issue. That's why most people try to produce their own feed if they can afford the means to. They produce their feed. That way, they're sure of what their fishes are eating. They know this is what's going into the stomach, and it's good for them. Okay, so and that's another thing. Farmers, like we were saying, know your budgets. If you decide to, what most farmers do is they overstock, and halfway through the production process, they realize, oh, I can no longer afford to keep this farm going as far as feeding. Then they start compromising on the quality of the feed, which is a big mistake, because now they just throw anything at the fish. Catfish will eat anything. Unfortunately, they will eat anything you throw to them.
Somebody actually sent me a message that made me crack up last night. Said his uncle here in the UK, right, had a catfish business, but they didn't get the numbers right properly. And then I think he went in with a high number, about 24,000 catfish. And then there were he couldn't keep up. And then they were giving them a bar. And he said, they died. A lot of them died.
Yeah, that's why you're turning the catfish to a human and feeding them what human will consume. Throwing the catfish to a Nigerian, that's the problem.
The guy said they died. That they lost about nearly 20,000 of them. They died
because it doesn't contain the right. Just like humans, we need to have a balanced diet that we eat. So when you just change them from getting the right feed to just what you want to feed them so they can survive, and that affects, because catfish is made up of it's like they have flesh in them as well. Especially if you target into sell to farmers to smoke. Because when you smoke the catfish, they shrink in size, which is normal. But as long as you're not shrinking below 70%, you are good. Okay. So what most farmers do is, due to not planning accurately before stocking their farm, they realize that they can no longer, stock their farm to where they can sell. So they start compromising on the quality of the feed, and just start throwing anything at the catfish. What will happen is that fish would eventually, grow up to 1 kg, but it's going to be mainly it's going to contain more fat in it. So
Ah,
yeah, that's the thing. So when you have a farmer that comes to just buy and smoke, if they come to your farm one time and realize that after smoking your catfish, it shrank below 50%, they won't come back to you. And that's the thing. So because when
so they would know.
they
They
would
would
know
know straight away that you didn't feed them
them
properly.
right, correct. It might swell, it might contain 1 kg, but inside of that fish is just full of fat. And then when they go to the oven and smoke it, they realize that wow, it shrinks. And if they come to my farm and realize that after buying from me and they smoke it, they can get up to 75% of that total weight. They'll keep coming to me and not going to that person's farm. Why? Because
Can you do me a favor? You know that number that you told me behind the scenes, like how much in naira? I know you talked about the kilograms of the feed that you would need to feed them for a period of. By the way, if you've just joined us and you realize you've lost the bulk of information, don't worry. Once this live session comes to an end, you can always watch a playback on the channel because Mr. Ernest has provided a ton of information which if you're interested in the business will be very, very helpful. So feel free to watch a playback. So what I'm trying to say is, I
yeah,
remember when I had a chat with you, you said it cost about, is it about 300 naira
correct. It
to
takes an
grow a
average,
catfish.
an average of
Average.
now. If it depends, if you're formulating your own feed yourself, okay, if you are formulating your feed, you're cutting costs and feeding. If you're formulating your feed, it takes an average of 300 to 400 naira to grow your one catfish, okay, to one
So if
kg.
you're buying your feed, it'll be like how much?
You spend at least up to 500, up to 500 naira, and that's why when we did the calculation of 15,000, we broke even. So
Yeah.
you spend at least 500 naira when it comes to buying your other feed. But if you're producing your feed, that's why you make more and still maintain the quality when you produce your own feed. That's why the future of every catfish farmer is to be able to produce their own feed.
So let me ask you.
Mm-hmm.
So I decide to buy raise 15,000 catfish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's say I have a minute amount of mortality. We're still doing good. We're on track here. And
Mm-hmm.
then at the time of harvest, me here being a businessman, I decide that you know what, I'm gonna smoke every catfish and their mama. I take all of them to the grill and I
Yes,
smoke
sir.
all of them. What does that number look like?
It's gonna be a lot higher, sir. I have to get my calculator. But if you do have a calculator there, I can give you the numbers and then you just do the math. But if you're able
Yeah, go
to
on.
if you're able to raise 15,000, of course you have casualty, but let's just say for the purpose of calculation, let's say you have 15,000. All you have to do is in Lagos, the least they would sell 1 kg small catfish is 4,250 naira to 4,500 naira. Just multiply 15,000 times 425. That's your figure.
Times 4,250.
15 naira. Yeah, so 15,000 times 4,250.
Uh, what is that even
Yeah,
possible?
it is possible, yes, sir. But the problem is not every farmer is able to obtain that quantity of that size of catfish. But if you are able
That's
to
that's
success,
like what? That's like 63 million.
yes, sir, 15,000.
Wow,
That is why we
that's
have people who just buy fresh and resell. Or then again, you have to understand that it's a business. Of course, you have to create awareness. It's very important because if you have that amount of smoked catfish sitting in your farm and nobody knows that you have that amount of catfish in your farm, you'll make not even one profit from it. Okay, so
mm,
you
mm.
have to also approach it as a business. Okay, so you have to invest in your brand. You have to do marketing, target your audience. Okay, if you have your audience,
Somebody said greedy Franklin. Are you joking? Look at you. Look at this. Look at this. What? You don't like money? What? I'm gonna, bro. I'm gonna put that catfish in my head and go to the market. I'm gonna go to the market. What? Are you joking, blood? What is wrong with you? Yeah?
And
Go
that's
on.
what I tend to do at my farm as well. That's why I'm currently I at my farm. I currently have construction going on for feed production. I'm also constructing where I'll be smoking my fish. Okay, so it's the future of every catfish farmer. The future is to be able to produce your own food and to be able to smoke those fish and sell them. Okay, now what
Somebody's
most
saying, somebody's saying you're not taking. Well, wait, sorry. Somebody's saying you're not taking into consideration the shrinking aspect. He talked about it already. Of course, we're having a laugh here. Even if, of course, they will shrink from being
yeah,
grilled, right?
correct,
But you're still going to make multi-millions,
yeah,
provided you do it properly.
correct,
Bro, are you
and that
joking?
and that is why we do not calculate per fish. That's why we calculate per kilogram. Okay, so when I talk of
Yeah,
15,000, we're not talking about 15,000 catfish. We're talking about 15,000 kilogram worth of catfish. Okay, so they would shrink most definitely because they have liquid in them. So when you smoke them, they would shrink, of course. That's why when we do the calculation, we do not calculate per catfish. We calculate per kilogram because
yeah.
you might need more than one catfish to make that kilogram. Okay, so it's very important.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I mean, Abdullah is making an important point. He said in calculating the amount to be made from smoked fish, you'd have to realize that 1 kilogram fresh fish won't be equal to 1 kilogram smoked fish.
absolutely.
Of course, we know that. But what we are saying is there is no mysterious way around it. You expect it to shrink, but
Correct.
what I'm saying is, given the amount you would make, 1 kilogram about 4,000 naira, right?
Yes.
Come on, man. It's not rocket science.
They can go on Instagram and follow farmers and see how much they're selling. This is not I don't even smoke catfish as of right now. That is the current price of farmers selling. Okay, that is the current price of farmers right now. If you go to
Somebody, somebody's saying selling catfish is not hard at all. You walk to the women who sell the fish in the market and tell them you sell fish, they will show up. But never make a mistake of using their skill, use yours.
absolutely, absolutely, because our people, Nigerians, sometimes people get greedy and they adjust and they manipulate, figures. That's why you want to have, your scale. The one that I would even recommend is the digital scale.
Right.
The digital scale is the one I would actually recommend. That whatever you put on that thing, you will see it on that scale. So you always use your scale. That is very, very important. That's a really good one too. You want to always have that back of your mind.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Eunice is saying everyone eats catfish. It's a big business. They're expensive in America. Same thing here in the UK. It's a big business, man.
it
It's a
is.
big business.
I
I
looked it
mean,
up actually.
let me
I
just
did.
say something.
Mhm.
I'm. It's nice to get excited. Anybody will get excited about numbers. And let me just put this out there. I am thoroughly aware that every business, any type of business, has its pros and cons.
Mhm.
That's why I have basically stressed on the point with the gentleman. And if you've joined us lately, please watch a playback, okay? Because this is a very helpful session. What we're trying to get at is, I'm sure he will also agree with me. I personally have also exchanged messages with some other persons who watch my channel who do similar business. There was a guy that heard me mention a catfish business, yeah, in a different stream that I had, and he emailed me. He told me that he lost about 10 million naira.
Mhm.
So I emailed him and I said, "How did that happen?" You're not going to believe, because he said to me that he had a lot of money at the time, but he didn't have a clue about the management and the daily running. So he said he woke up one week and there was a plethora of mortality. The fish just died. And then that was when somebody asked him to bring in an expert, and then said the experts came in and they looked at the waters and they said there was a lot of algae at the bottom of the pond. And then they realized as well that his feed was heavily contaminated. So do you see now? And that's why you were talking about, it's very important to know where you buy your feed, who you buy your feed from. Because you told me something about some people sell feeds whereby the bag of feed is already expired and they put
Correct.
them in a different bag
Back.
to try and conceal the expiration. So those people just want your money, they will kill your fish and make you lose money.
Correct.
let's take what do you call it? Questions and answers. I mean, let's do questions and answers. Somebody's saying, okay, answer this one quickly. What is the feed made of?
Well, they have different formulas for making catfish. I know mostly you have maize, crayfish, soya beans, blood meal. Those are like the key ingredients. So to contain the right amount of protein, need to have the right amount of protein. But I know we can't really cover everything in this YouTube video. But I would say mainly it's made up of soya bean, maize. Crayfish, blood meal, and those are like the four major ingredients for it. So if you're thinking of going into producing your own food for the catfish, I would say those are like the main thing to look at. I know currently there's a scarcity of maize in Nigeria. Currently, but hopefully that can be resolved. But yeah, it contains maize, soya bean, blood meal, and crayfish. Those are like the four key ingredients in it.
Right. Somebody said, how do we avoid buying bad feed? Any tips?
I would say go to a farmer that's successful, that's close to your farm, find out what they're using to feed theirs. I think that's the easiest way to avoid buying a bad feed. Go to a farmer, and some you might be lucky close to you. They have factories that would process the feed for you. So you just take these raw materials to them, and then they help you process it to the point where you're able to just take the processed produce from that raw material and feed your fish. They don't have that where my farm is located. That's why I'm currently working on getting my own processing machine for my fish.
Right. So are you saying that it's viable if a catfish farmer can eventually invest in having in being able to process their own food? Because I remember when we had the chat, you said it cuts down tremendously on the amount you spend on feeding them.
Yes, it does. It does. It cuts down tremendously because you need to look at it from this way. Those people that were getting their feed from other nations, they add the cost of logistics to it. They add cost of their employee. You know how much it will cost them to hire the people that would produce that food, bagging and all that. They add all that cost to that feed, and then they send it to us here, and then we get it. And then before you buy it from the local retailer that's close to you, that local retailer has added his or her own cost to it as well. So you're dealing with a
Right.
lot of factors. So that increases the amount of feed. But when you produce it by just getting the raw materials yourself, and then you produce it yourself, you are saving. You're like really saving on the production of the feed. And then you need to think of the long time cost of operating a fish farm, because you'll be saving yourself a lot of money when it comes to feed production. And that is the main factor to consider when it comes to fish farming. So if you can afford to get the producing machine to produce it for your farm, I would say by all means invest in it. You can also use that as another source of income for your farm. You can also be producing for other farmers, you know, that they know that, okay, this is a reputable farm. If I get feed from them, I'm good to go. They will come to your farm and tell you how much will it cost you to help me produce this amount worth of catfish feed. So you can also
Right.
channel that as a side hustle for your farm while you catering to the needs of your own farm as well. So you can kill two birds with one stone with that.
Right. Somebody's asked, there's a question on the screen. Any tips on accessing the export market for dried catfish?
Yes, you can look it up. I know with UK, you can currently direct ship catfish, smoked catfish to residents. It's not allowed to export a huge amounts because of the current laws there. But in America, it is possible, but you have to get your certification from the FDA, I believe. I'm currently looking into that as well. So you need to get your certification from the FDA. They would have to come. They have their agents in Nigeria that will come to your farm to inspect and make
Right.
sure it meets their criteria. So if it does meet the criteria, you get licensed by the FDA. Then you can then direct ship wholesale from Nigeria to America, as the case might be.
This one is how many staff members are needed to manage 15K capacity?
Well, I would say you need, of course, you need a security. You need to secure your farm. So you need at least once. I would say at least one security guard. You can have other workers come there during the day, and then the security guard can just resume at the evening and work throughout the night, and then they switch the next day. I would say a minimum of two, a minimum of two staffs would be fine.
How many staffs do you have on your farm right now?
I currently have five staff on my farm because I'm also setting up my plan for production of the feed. So
Yeah, you said. Yeah.
I would have at least two people taking care of that, and I have at least two people attending to the fish plus the security guys. So I have a total of five staff.
Right. Okay. Fantastic. Let me see. Ha. This one is important. What are the obstacles when being in USA and having the business in Nigeria? As you know, there's being a diaspora and a lot of people have so plethora of ideas. One of the
Mhm.
major setback is reliability, people hijacking your business and ruin everything for you. So this question comes up a lot. How do you deal with this? Go on.
So what I do is doing stock. So before I leave Nigeria, I make sure, of course, after the harvest period, I get the new stock and I stock my farm. Okay, and then I know how many fish are available at my farm. So I put the record as well. I have like an Excel spreadsheet that I follow to keep up my records. So I know how many catfish are at the farm before I leave. So when I come back to America and then get reports from Nigeria, I always make sure my farm manager reports to me on a daily basis to tell me, okay, this is what happened today at the farm. It doesn't have to be a long conversation, just the straight to the point what happened. And so if there's any casualty, they email me a picture of the casualty, and then I go to the overall record and I subtract that casualty. So on my end here, I don't necessarily have to be at the farm doing the production process, okay? But I would say doing
So
harvest.
how do your customers pay for transactions? It's straight into your business account, right?
Yes, of course, yeah, straight to my business account.
So your staffs don't handle cash.
Well, they do currently, but I'm working towards transitioning that to cashless. But currently, they do accept cash, okay? Because I have an overall amount. I have an overall figure of the total of my fish. So when they bring the money, I look at the overall total and I subtract. But I'm
So
working towards.
if somebody showed up today and they wanted to buy, say, 1,000 catfish from you, for example,
Mhm.
and they came with a bag load of money, are you not worried about security? Are you not worried that your staff's brain could turn sideways and leg it with the money?
Yeah, that's a concern, and that's what I'm also working on addressing as well. Currently, I haven't gotten to the point where I accept just tellers, but that's what I'm working towards. It's part of the whole setback with the COVID because most banks are not even open for inside
Yeah,
activities.
yeah.
They're like just cash out through ATM. So that's part of what I was trying to transition into this year, but with everything that's going on, I haven't done that quite yet, but it is very, very important. I watched your video with the poultry farms, and that
Yes,
was
yes.
something she emphasized on. That's something that should be eventually incorporated into your day-to-day operation because then it makes it a whole lot seamless. Um, but yeah, so I currently just keep tab of the totality of what I have in my farm, and over a period of time, I just have them cross-check with me. But doing harvest, you have to be in Nigeria. If you're not operating your farm from Nigeria, doing harvest, that's the cash out season, that's the money season. You have to be on ground. You have to be on ground because that's when
There is no
farmers.
way. There is no way you're gonna have your harvest going on and then you sit abroad, man.
No,
You
no,
failed if
no.
you do.
Yeah,
No
yeah. You
chance.
you have to be on
But
ground.
then, do you think it's easy if you've made it completely cashless? And say for as an extenuating circumstance, the person is unable to be. I'm just talking hypothetically. Personally, I would rather be on ground with my boots and my heart. I'm there with my in the forefront. But
Yeah,
what I'm saying is, if for whatever reason the person is unable to be on ground, if it's cashless, do you think it's possible?
it is possible because you know what your total stock is. You know how much you're expecting, right? So if they just bring tellers to you and then they pay and then they supply, Yeah, you don't have to be on ground, but no, I would be on ground, even if it's a wire transfer that they're using to make payments. I would still want to be on ground, just to make sure everything goes through just fine, because you're not just only selling, you're also restocking your farm before you leave Nigeria. So you
Right.
want to make sure you get the right breeds for the next process, for the next production. So
Let me
yeah.
answer. Let me answer this one. Let me answer this one very quickly. Do you offer training for new starters? So this is it. Myself and Mr. Ernest, right? We're working on a training, a fully detailed, but because you can appreciate that this is a lot more detailed than this. This is a session to whet your appetite. We're working on a fully detailed how do I say, catfish farming training package, which it will be on my website. I'm working on my website in the background, and as soon as it's available for people to book, sessions, which will probably be done on Zoom platforms and stuff like that, I'll let you guys know. If you're interested, you can sign up for it. So, do you want to say anything about that, Ernest?
No, just like you said, when that website is up and running and you have the rights request in for it, I don't mind. We can go ahead and set up a training platform for that. And then we just, because we can't really cover everything on this YouTube live. Truth be told, we need
No,
we
no,
need
we'll be
a
here for it.
detail. That way we can even go into looking at where to get your market audience from, like everything. There's a lot more than what we just mentioned here. This is not even up to 20% of the knowledge that involves in catfish farming. So,
So,
it's
and again, if you're wondering what that does is it filters and it narrows down the audience then to people who are really interested. So if we have 20 people attending a training session, if we have 10 people, if you're paying towards it, you know pretty damn well that you're investing in acquiring information and educating yourself, because nothing better than having the right information, knowing what to do, and being under the wings of people that are already in the business, that have the knowledge, that can give you the nitty gritty of what the industry is about. Every questions will be asked. Your hands will be held, and they can say, we'll babysit you, give you potty training, and and then you can fly.
oh yeah.
So that's what it's about. As soon as it's ready, I'll let you guys know, and then those that are interested can sign up for it. So, but let me pick up more questions. One here. Let's see. Let's see. Let me see. Bring up your questions, right? So I can ask Mr. Ernest more questions. I'm trying to see some of the things in it. We've talked about the obstacles whilst abroad. Somebody's saying, could you explain? Oh, hold on. This one didn't even finish typing the question. Sheesh. What's the potential? I don't know what this one says. What is the potential for shoulder fly maggots as a protein source? Do you know what that is?
This kind of falls back to what we're talking about when it comes to feeding your catfish. This is like alternative means to feed them. Because when most farmers realize that they can afford to continue to feed, then they go to other means. I personally do not agree with feeding your catfish with maggots, because I don't think it's hygienic, because you gotta think it's people that would eat these things. So I don't agree with it, but farmers do, unfortunately. So I don't have anything
Mm,
against it. I just don't recommend you feed them with that.
okay. Let me. I saw a question.
I
A
don't
question.
recommend that.
Right. Mr. Dan Lamy G. He said, "What are projected extra costs you are seeing for smoking?"
The oven. I think you need to think of the oven. And of course, you would need workers, of course, as well. If you're going to be smoking up to that capacity, 15,000, you need at least two workers to just be in charge of the smoking section. You don't want to have the same staff feeding your fish, producing the feed, and still smoking. That's going to be too much. So you need at least one to two staff to just be in that smoking section. They can be smoking that fish for you. And I would also say the price of getting the oven machine, or the smoker, like most people call it. I saw some. I think it varies from about 650 to a million, depending on the capacity you want to put in it. So I think to
But
think of
but the truth is, would you say that acquiring that oven is a viable investment as
yes,
far
I see
as
the
farming?
yeah, I see the oven as money on demand, to be honest, because um, you just think about it. Okay, I need to sell 3,000 catfish within a week. You just go to your farm, take those fresh catfish from the pond, smoke it, you ship it to Abuja, Port Harcourt, Lagos. It's gone. So you, I can't overemphasize the importance
Yeah,
of
somebody's
having a
saying the
small farm.
oven is about 750,000 for 500 capacity. So basically,
Correct.
you can load up to 500 in one go.
In one go, correct. So it is very, very important you have that, especially if you're going into this as a big catfish farmer. You want to make money out of all the process. You don't just want to be producing fresh catfish when you can smoke it and sell it for more. So if you can afford to get it, it is money well invested. You'll definitely get your returns on it, most
Um,
definitely.
right. Did you experience cannibalism at all, and how do you guide against it?
Yeah, I did. I mean, my first production, I did experience some percentage of cannibalism. And what I did was just sorting, being on top of your sorting game is very important with catfish farming. Being because they will outgrow each other. That's just the process. Some will get to the feed before others, and they not only get the food first, they try to take the shine of other catfish. So they kind of like prevent other fishes from getting to the food. So that's when you need to sort them out. But if they're pretty much uniformed across all the ponds, you should be good to go. There's a low
So,
cannibalism rate.
are you saying cannibalism is only about the bigger fish preying on the smaller sized ones? Do you have a
Mhm.
situation where the bigger boys, about the same size, they just dive into themselves and tear each other to shreds? Or is it just mostly bigger versus smaller ones?
Well, one other thing that can cause that is the pond construction. That's why you want to get a professional to construct your pond, because the pond needs to be smooth. There should be no reason. There should be no cracks or no extra cement that's just hanging out, and then the fish just swim by and then they have like a cut. Because catfish are very sensitive to the smell of blood, and if they smell blood due to a cut from one of the fish, they would
They'll
all
go
pounce
after
on.
that fish.
They would all pounce on that. You would be surprised. I've seen it play right in front of my eyes. Like if there's like a scratch, they pound on it, and then in no time that fish is gone. So the pond has to be smooth. They have to be like a smooth surface across each pond. So, and that's the only thing I can think of other than the different sizes. Okay.
Right, right. This one. This person said, if any, what are the biggest challenges in sales and marketing? Is demand high, irrespective of region?
Well, some regions have a larger percentage, like larger demand. Now, some religions, like some religions now, don't really care for catfish. Some people don't like catfish. So if your farm is based in that religion, it's gonna be hard unless you then have to smoke and ship and send to other regions. But if your goal is to sell fresh catfish, I would say 80% of Nigerians eat catfish, but there's still some percentage of people that don't really care for it. So you
Right.
do not want to have your farm located in that area if you're selling fresh. But it doesn't really matter where your farm is located, to be honest, if your target audience is for the smoked catfish, because all you can do is you smoke it and you just distribute. Okay. Because my farm is in Edo State and I'm planning to, distribute to other states as well when I start producing smoked catfish. So it doesn't really matter the location as long as you're willing to distribute.
Right. Okay. Somebody said, did you need to get registered with NAFDAC or other Nigerian agencies, and how long was the process?
Well, for registering your business, you do not need NAFDAC for that. You just need to get it registered with corporate affairs commissions. But when you decide to start producing, your feed for other farmers, because then you have to bag it and seal it, and then it's like a
Yeah.
product on its own. Then you need a NAFDAC. I haven't gone through that process yet, so I can't really tell you the process that's involved in registering with NAFDAC, I would just say contact the local agency that handles that registration process with NAFDAC, and then they'll give information on that. And before you start selling the feed as well, you need to have your NAFDAC registration for it.
Right. Okay. That makes.
So I would say just contact a lawyer, and they can help you go through the process for NAFDAC registration.
So, can we sort of just drop something? You know, we've got you at the start of the live stream for the benefit of those that didn't join us. Like I said, you can always watch a playback. You talked about at the bare minimum, a plot of land will be okay for. Did you say 10 pounds?
15,000. Yeah, I need at least 10 pounds, because if you're stuck in about 15,000, you need at least 10 pounds. That would be able to, because you want to have ponds for sorting as well. You don't want to just have enough for the fish. You need to have at least 2 extras for sorting. So I would say 10 ponds, and I would also say proper management includes.
Somebody asked a question earlier. I can't find it, but I remember now. Somebody said when talking about cleaning the pond, right? They're saying, do you need to? How do you sort your fish? Do you empty the pond completely in order for you to clean a particular pond? How do you channel the fish away from there? What do you do?
Yeah, you can empty them. You can empty the fish completely. They would not die at an instance without water. Catfish are rugged. As long as you don't leave them for an extended period of time, like a day, then yeah. But I'll stay for a few hours, up to 5-6 hours, it should be good. It will not affect them, especially if it's like the older they get, the more rugged they become. So I would say if you're sorting them out at the early stage, then you want to make sure you have water on both ponds. So you drain out the water, not 100%, but at least you drain out most of the water. So the fishes that you're not currently attending to, you can just push them aside to that part of the pond that has water in there. You understand? So you want to make sure they still have water, especially when they're younger, like the first 1 to 2 months. But when they're like 3 to 4 months, you don't really need to have water presence. Just make sure you don't spend the entire day sorting out your farm. Make sure you have enough hands on ground. You can hire people just for that day to help with the sorting process. That way it's quick and it's seamless. You do not want to spend a longer period of time sorting out your fish. Okay.
Right. Great stuff. So I think we've done well with the questions. Like I said to you, as soon as the rugged as in more tolerant. That's exactly what he's saying. Rugged means the use of the word rugged means as in more tolerant. Absolutely. So as I said, there's a training, detailed catfish farming training package that we're working on in the background. As soon as that's ready, once that website goes live, we'll let you know. And if you're interested, I'll push it. I'll let you on my subsequent videos. If you're interested, you register. It'll involve myself and Mr. Ernest, whereby it'll be able to open up fully, take you through the nitty-gritty of the business and all the information. And also, that's a lot more personalized, whereby every question will be answered about investment, about setting up your farm, buying equipment, your target audience, and all that stuff. All right. So that's me done for now. Thank you from me to Mr. Ernest, and thank you everybody. And we hope to see you again soon. All right.
All right, guys.
Peace and love, man. Thank you. All right, man. Let me end.